congregation in search of a new minister. Our minister retired.
Let's just call it
In search. Well, we're always in search. I have some opening words which I'll also use to as the chalice lighting. This is the mission of our faith: to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands.
No, we just need the little candle. Is there, there's a little candle there?
A tall candle. I don't see one. Okay, but maybe there's one back here.
We'll manufacture one right here. Oh, here we go. Sorry about that. There. Oh, yeah, it's right there, but it's buried.
How many minutes are this?
Yeah, exactly. I forgot to mention that my name is Pam Berman, and I'm both the service leader and presenter for today. So we're going to start off things by singing in the Teal book, 1008, When Your Heart is in a Holy Place, I hope. 1008. I don't know, I thought, she does get vacation, but she neglected to tell me that when I picked these. So you guys are gonna have to sing extra loud because I'm not a great singer. Yeah, we can hum. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, and our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place.
I didn't hear you guys over there.
Well, that went.
Our voices may be someplace else.
That went all right. We got through it. I'm going to ask if anybody has announcements before we sort of go to the, and you said you had a fellowship one? Yep, go ahead. Oh, okay. Yep.
So I have a couple of announcements relative to fellowship.
starting some new things next month. The first one, I spoke a couple of weeks ago about this sojourner idea that we came up with on a little road trip. And this is kind of a pop-up, you see something you want to do, let people know about it. And we will have a dedicated listserv so that if you don't care about this kind of stuff, you never hear about it. But this first one, you're going to hear about. And you'll hear more about both of these in the newsletter next week. But the first one is a part of the Halifax Fringe Festival. And it's the evening of September 3rd at St. Andrews. The Newcomers Choir will be performing. So that just seemed to have all kind of connections with us. So it's a $5 to $10 admission. I will put the link online in the newsletter, and then we can think about whether we want to get coffee or supper or something afterwards.
So St. Andrews United Church at Coburg and Roby?
Correct. Exactly.
No, because there's more than one.
Is there more? That one, 6 o'clock. The second new activity will be the following Tuesday. We will start a Tuesday lunch brunch. And this is a drop-in, and we'll start doing it every week, and we'll see how that goes. If it's too much, then we'll cut it back to some schedule. But noon on Tuesday here, just come on down and just bring your own lunch. There'll be a little bit of structure to the program to be revealed, but mostly it's just an opportunity to be together. So watch for the newsletter next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we'll have a collection to help us do the work of this church.
Get them early. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Wait, make noise.
Hello?
I caught them in circles. I caught them off guard by going around.
So I have a reading, and then I'll go into my presentation. It's not going to be a long presentation. I was expecting more of a discussion on the topic than pontificating too much myself. I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. So my volunteer experience with the North American Indigenous Games, which just happened in July, began actually last year when I volunteered for the World Canoe Kayak event. I've been involved in canoe kayak for many, many years as a master, and a few years when I was younger. So I decided in the first year that I was retired, I could actually volunteer instead of covering the event as I used to do. At the bottom of that volunteer application for the World Canoe Kayak event, there was a box that you could check if you would also be interested in volunteering for the North American Indigenous Games. I'd never seen that before, double, an interesting addition. Wouldn't have put the canoe kayak people out too much, but since the North American Indigenous Games people were looking for 3,000 volunteers, hey, it was a simple way to help, and it did. I saw a number of the same people at both events. Then last December, I took part in a volunteer orientation session and a cultural awareness session. I went to the in-person version, but you could do them online. In any case, I went to the the campus, the Ivany campus in Dartmouth, and the sessions were led by 2 Indigenous women. One of them was a Cree from Manitoba, and she ended the session by telling us that she considered our volunteerism part of the truth and reconciliation journey, which kind of struck me like a lightning bolt. I would never have said that myself. And maybe you can't say it yourself. Maybe it is up to the people themselves to tell you. But I just thought about that and took it very seriously. I thought, well, maybe just showing up does mean something. Obviously, to her it did. When the games got closer, the people in charge decided that I should be part of the social media squad. I worked for CBC for 39 years. That might have something to do with it. So I took video and photos at a number of venues. It's maybe 9, I can't remember now. And those videos and photos got edited and uploaded to Instagram and TikTok. Never saw them, don't have either. But those young Indigenous people are on social media, believe me, because they never turned me down for an interview. And by the end of the week, they got even more enthusiastic because they had seen the reels, as they call them. They had a great week. Every kid I saw was having fun, mostly with each other. It was like a joy to watch them kind of, have fun with each other. And one of the runners actually told me, she said, I've never been on a team before, kind of thing. I guess she must have, it was long distance running I was covering at the time. She must have done a lot of training by herself from whatever community that she lived in. Anyway, they got to see themselves on social media, and I helped with that. It wasn't hard. I worked with the technology before, asked questions before, did it for many years. But I showed up in a bright yellow t-shirt. All of us volunteers had bright yellow t-shirts.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And on the back was a Mi'kmaq word, and it meant helper. That was what I was told. It was the translation. And all participants were told to look for people in the yellow t-shirts if they needed anything. Well, on my very first day of covering social media, I was at the Dartmouth Crossing Cultural Village site, which is a very smaller version of the Halifax one, doing interviews when I got a message from my team leaders that the American ambassador was at the Halifax Commons, and could I boot over there and get him, track him down. I never laid eyes on the man, I had no idea what he looked like, and record a greeting. So I did drive over there thinking this is a wild goose chase, and it's starting to feel like my old assignment desk. Found a parking spot, ran all over the site, asking everybody I could think of, had they seen the American ambassador? And of course he left already. It was totally waste of time. But anyway, I'm now in the Halifax Cultural Village, and a vendor flags me down, says, I was told to look for someone in yellow. I need to go to the washroom to watch my stall. Sure. This is how this day is going. Anyway, I'm standing there at the vendor's stall when a parent runs over in a total panic because her 13-year-old is stranded at Beasley Field, which is in Dartmouth, by the way, and has no ride back to his hotel, which he needs to get to like immediately so he can go to the opening games. And I'm going, oh my God. Well, I mean, I'm trying to track down transportation people, making Uber suggestions. Eventually the whole thing got sorted out by her coach, but she had she had someone to freak out with, and I guess that helped. I don't know. That shirt was like a magnet. I was like, okay, I'm going to have to be prepared, not just for whatever I'm supposed to be doing as a volunteer, but to be a helper. And that's what I did. If I didn't know the answer, I tried to find it, but I didn't always get the answer. But I think I made them feel better that there was someone that they could at least ask.
So this isn't a long discussion about truth and reconciliation. I don't know what most people have in mind when they think about being an ally or helping with that journey. And of course, some of it's going to be a lot harder than that, but maybe just your presence is a start. And it's certainly the start of our conversation. So, because there are other people who are at those particular games so they can talk about their experience. There are people from here I know who are on our committees for both, anti-racism and truth and reconciliation committees, so I'm sure they have thoughts, but it wasn't any deeper than that. It was just, that's really interesting that they would think that my just being here, was part of that journey. So that's what I have to say. So I'm going to put
I was assigned to the. You can't talk to you guys.
I'm going to go at the front.
I was assigned to what the sign on the first day said, the elder tent, and that wasn't quite descriptive enough. So they got a little more descriptive. What the tent was for the elders and the knowledge keepers who were working in the demonstration huts at the Halifax Commons. So we were kind of across the field from them. And it was just a break tent. It was a place for them to come out of where they had been demonstrating or telling stories or whatever it was they were doing. And we just had a constant stream all day of those people plus other people who just thought, oh, free food, let's go in and check it out. And you had to kind of gently say, not exactly. So just lots and lots of interesting conversations. But my favorite one was early in the week. In fact, it was on opening day, and we had to kind of sort of figure out what is it we're supposed to be doing here. But I was talking with an Indigenous woman, and I said, I have bought earrings on Cape Breton, in the Pacific Northwest, at Four Corners in the American Southwest, and I never know whether it's cultural appreciation or appropriation when I wear these pieces of jewelry that I really like. And she said, appropriation. An Indigenous person made them, you paid for them, it's appreciation, wear them. So I said, okay, I have been blessed to wear my Inukchuk and my Thunderbird and my Dreamcatcher whenever I want to. So, but I think Pam is absolutely right. It's just the showing up. And as I said, when we invited folks, when the humanists invited folks to come to the Africaville reunion, that being an ally means getting out of our comfort zone, just going to things that we just feel right at home at. Big deal. So it's kind of getting out of our comfort zone and showing up and proclaiming who we are is not a bad thing to do either while we're there. So it was a good thing to do. And we had these lovely name tags that got us free bus rides all week long.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's not always going to be as I was invited, right, to be a volunteer. They needed 3,000 volunteers, so it's not always going to be, as easy as that to show up and be counted. Sometimes showing up is difficult, but showing up is important. So, anybody else? Doesn't have to be about North American Indigenous Games. It could be, sure.
Paul and I were both volunteers for the Indigenous Games too, in very different roles. And I was first at the airport for that first weekend when they were all arriving. And the Saturday, when they were expecting some 3,000 people to be coming through the airport that day, at least, was quite interesting. But as a volunteer, I'd volunteered for other organizations before. And this one, the team leaders I found were excellent, were brilliant. They just had it down, what was supposed to be happening for their role, and who was supposed to be doing what, and how, how we'll manage this, and how we'll adjust, and how we'll change things, because things never work out quite as anticipated, especially the airport. And they were really great. But the actual fact was there were too many volunteers, so that you were tripping over each other kind of, or half of you were standing around not really doing anything while the others are doing all the work. Some of them ended up loading luggage onto buses all day. And they're big cases. They had equipment, they had stuff, but I ended up at the other end of the line, and it was just saying, go down there, the buses are down there, the buses are down there, round those trees, you can't see them from here, the buses are down there. That was my job, but anyway. And then the rest of the week, I was at one of the residences, and I picked Mount St. Vincent because it's closer to where I live and easier to get to. Mount St. Vincent has 3 separate buildings that are residences, but the team lead there had decided that it made far more sense for us to all be in the central area, right near where the cafeteria was, right near where they had a big, what were they called? Brave spaces, where there was a cultural activities that they could participate in, like braiding sweetgrass, or making tobacco pouches, or just a huge space for throwing a ball around or whatever. So we were actually assigned there, and I ended up being there most of the week. And there was really nothing to do except be there just in case somebody asked a question, because the young people were coming in for meals or leaving or going back to their rooms or looking for when the next bus left. And, so I wasn't very busy, but I was very impressed with some of the other volunteers who were Indigenous. And they were so interesting and so helpful with sharing their cultures with us. They weren't involved in the games, but they had come out because it was, Indigenous kids, and they really wanted to help move this whole process forward. One fellow was a teacher in school and talked about the issues of trying to get Indigenous activities going in Fall River. And one of them was a university student who had all kinds of historical background, and he'd really looked into his whole cultural situation, and it was full of stories about different aspects of life as a Mi'kmaq in Nova Scotia. So it was the other volunteers I found really, really interesting that I always spend our time with. Yeah. And those gorgeous young kids. Yeah.
They were to a kid thrilled. They were all thrilled with their surroundings, with each other. It was great. I didn't get the experience of interacting with the same people because I was going to different venues. And when I volunteered for the World Canoe Kayak, I was at one spot one week and then another spot the other week. So this time I was a little bit more, different venue every morning and afternoon. So it did give me a broader perspective, but I didn't get sort of deeper into having repetitive conversations, but it was, the volunteers were, totally, it was a wonderfully organized event, I found, in all of the venues. And so, yeah, just being there, soaking up that experience was great too. Anybody else? It doesn't have to be about this particular event. I just using it as an example, but if anybody wants to talk about, being an ally somewhere else. Do you want me to bring them?
The red one?
Hello. I think the whole thing of being an ally is just being aware. And, you pick up things from different things. Like on the TV, I watched for the second time. I usually don't watch anything for twice, but I watched Alan Soloboy's appearance at the Lieutenant Governor's lecture series. He concluded the lecture series. And it was he was, in a sense, he didn't have a piece of paper in front of him. He just told the story of his life. And that was very interesting, really. He started off in a world that was not supportive of what he was doing, and now is very supportive, right? So his whole world has changed, and it really, our whole world has changed, right? There didn't used to be much indigenous anything anywhere, and he starts off with it being forbidden. The ceremonies are forbidden, dances are forbidden, drums are forbidden, and now all of those things happen. I've dabbled a little in looking at what some of the history was. I used to work at Jamestown Settlement, which was the state of Virginia's reproduction of Jamestown, built because Queen Elizabeth was coming. And people liked it so much it stayed, and it developed into something where they hire historians and they hire curators now, and people enact the lifestyle that Pocahontas lived, right? That's how we know it most. And the lifestyle that was in the ships and the fort. And, so that was when John said he was coming here, I reached for a book off of my shelf, and I wondered if there was a connection between Jamestown and here. And the connection was that in 1613, a Virginia sea captain burned down Port Royal. And, so then there were anywhere from 13 to 40 Frenchmen who ended up surviving the winter, November, December, January, February, March. 5 months they survived, and it's thought that many ended up living with the Mi'kmaq to survive. And there are only 3 words from that period that survive: roots and berries. So I, spent some time imagining what the roots and berries were.
That's why I don't live in Virginia anymore. Last fall, when I was even newer here, I took the St. Mary's Library Collaborative History course, and it was on Canadian cultures, and it just talked about how Canadian identity has evolved and been shaped over time. And one of the things that the professor, who was French Canadian, thought was worthy of note was that the duality of, at the same time that the Canadian government was working really hard to eradicate all aspects of Indigenous culture, anytime there was a dignitary who came to town for any reason, they called out all of the First Nation communities in full regalia to perform and be seen as an integral part of Canada. So, you know, a little bit of split personality going on there.
I just wanted to add, just to show the interest there was from the whole community in this. They got far more than 3,000 volunteers. And there were times when I was scheduled for a shift and they said, there really isn't anything here you could do, because they had so many people that they had slotted in somewhere that there wasn't necessarily a job at that point. Yeah, they had probably at least 4,000, if not more. They had to tell people, please stop volunteering there. We have too many.
I was the only one in social media at any one given venue, so we were a smaller group. But I know that the kids started seeing themselves on Instagram, and they were like, I asked them, like, I wasn't doing hard news, by the way. When I interviewed them, I was like, okay, so what's your favorite team outfit, you know, which team has the best outfit, you know, just sort of silly things like that. And but as the week went on, they were like, is this gonna be on Instagram? I went, probably, since I don't have Instagram. But anyway, yeah, no, there was, yeah, smaller, there was a lot of volunteers. They ended up with, yeah, like they had more than 3,000. And also everything was well attended, like everywhere I went. Now, of course, that could be that there were the parents and, you know, kind of filled up, but the cultural village was packed anytime I went there. I just think it was a great celebration. You know, so it was nice to have one instead of bad news.
I didn't volunteer there, but John and I went one evening to hear throat singers. Now, before this, I was not impressed with throat singers. It kind of made me feel uncomfortable. And I thought it was painful for them to have to do this. But we saw this two young women, throat singers, and they were wonderful. If you close your eyes, you could hear wolves howl, you could hear birds sing, you could hear the wind rustling through the trees. It was just marvelous. A whole new appreciation of throat singing.
There are so many aspects of pop culture that I no longer have a clue about what's going on, so this may not be as astounding as it was to me. But one of the biggest things that I saw with the kids as the week wore on was this collecting and trading of hat pins, except they wore them on their lanyard. And at one point, even though the tent I was in was the elder tent, they kind of gravitated there. And one day there must have been 40 kids around the table. It's like trading sports cards and things. It was trading these little hat pins. And I did not know until after it was all over that one of the most desired pins was the little pin that says helper on it. And as volunteers, we actually got two, and I didn't even pay any attention to what it was. So I would have had some prime swag there if I had had my two little hat pins. Yeah.
So I ended up with two from Winnipeg. He said, do you know about the golden boy? And I, yeah, my dad told me. I'll trade you the golden boy. tore that pin. I went, sure. It's like,
So what's the golden?
there's on the top of Winnipeg City Hall is a statue of a golden boy. And it's been around there for a long time because my dad was born in 37 and hasn't been back since he was 18. So it's been on the top of that building for a while. Anyway, I ended up with a golden boy in exchange for that one that they were all. He looks like he's running, so it could be actually a mythological figure. I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, that's him. Yeah. But they've only just called it Golden Boy that I know of. They've never called it like anything else. Anyway, my dad's from Winnipeg, so I took that one. But yeah, pin trading was big. Okay, I think we're done. I picked these before I knew how they came. Okay, closing words. Yes, right. Then I'll say closing words. So, does anybody have a joy or sorrow that they wish to share with us? Spread the gladness.
My son Nicholas lives just a block and a half away from here. But he lives in a house with 4 other guys. And they're not getting along at the moment. And so we're searching for a place for Nicholas to live. Only the amount for a bachelor apartment is often around $1,800. A bachelor apartment, very small. So he does not earn enough for the process for applying for an apartment, which I found out yesterday, is you have to earn at least 40%, and he does not. So it's the whole thing's very strange.
Discouraging. Anybody else have a joy or concern? Oh, my grandson is 2 this week. That's my joy. Extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth. The warmth of community. Oh, there it is. Aha. I knew there was something wrong. Now I have to put it back. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Yeah, I just picked 2. I didn't. I put the. Thank you.
Thank you.